Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Hemal Thakkar. I am assistant professor in cardiology in UN Mehta Hospital. Today, we are going to discuss on in-stent restenosis, which is very interesting topic. So, coming to the topic, in this topic, we are going to discuss about definition, predisposing factors, pathogenesis, mechanism of in-stent restenosis, clinical presentation, diagnosis, management, and what should be the DAPT duration after ISR, and summary. So, starting with, although intracoronary stent restenosis is much less common with the use of drug-eluting stent than with bare metal stent, but the number of stents being implanted in interventional practice and the ongoing risk for restenosis over time means that the treatment of ISR remains an important clinical challenge. In a report from National Cardiovascular Data Registry in 2020, PCI for ISR represented 10.6% of all PCI procedures. So, as number of procedures, plasties are increased, and so number of ISR is also increased. So, 10.6% of all PCI procedures which were registered in National Cardiovascular Data Registry in 2020. So, what is the definition of ISR? So, restenosis actually is a gradually re-narrowing of stented segment that occurs most oftenly between 3 to 12 months after stent placement. But in contrast, stent thrombosis is an abrupt thrombotic occlusion of a previously widely patent stent. So, it is a catastrophic complication that presents as sudden death or large MI in most of the patients. So, restenosis and stent thrombosis is a different entity. So, clinical restenosis assessed objectively as requirement for ischemia-driven repeat revascularization. Clinically, it is defined as diameter stenosis of more than 50% and one of the following, which includes positive history of recurrent angina pectoris, presumably related to target vessel, objective signs of ischemia at rest, which is ECG changes, or during exercise test, or presumably related to target vessel. Abnormal results of any invasive functional diagnostic test, example coronary flow velocity reserve or FFR less than 0.8, IVUS minimum cross sectional area less than 4 mm square, and has been found to correlate with abnormal FFR and need for subsequent target vessel revascularization. So, target lesion revascularization with diameter stenosis more than 70%, even in absence of above ischemic signs or symptoms, it is considered as clinically restenosis. So, restenosis is basically defined on the presence of how much percentage of restenosis with or without symptoms. If it is more than 50% and associated with one of the major symptoms like angina pectoris, raised ECG changes, or TMT changes, or FFR positive, or with IVUS minimum cross sectional area of less than 4 mm square. Else, if it is more than 70% diameter stenos, then it is considered as restenosis. Another classification for in-stent restenosis is Mehran classification, which is very famous classification, and Mehran has defined ISR in 4 classes. Class 1 includes focal ISR, class 2 is diffuse ISR, class 3 is diffuse proliferative, and class 4 is total occlusion. Class 1 includes lesions which are less than 10 mm in length and are placed at the unstented segment, which is articulation or gap. Type 1B is the body of the stent, type 1C is proximal or distal margin, and type 1D is combination of these sites. So, basically class 1 ISR is focal ISR, and it is divided into 4 types: A, B, C, D. A is the unstented segment which is affected. Type 1B is the body of the stent. Type 1C is either proximal edge or distal margin, and type 1D is combination of above sites, which is multifocal ISR. Class 2 is diffuse ISR, length more than 10 mm. Diffuse means length more than 10 mm, and focal means length less than 10 mm, and are confined to the stented segment without extending outside the margin. So, class 2 is diffuse ISR within the stent. Class 3 is diffuse proliferative, which is again diffuse means lesions more than 10 mm in length and extend beyond the margins of the stented segment. And class 4 is total occlusion, so lesion with a TB flow grade of 0. So, this is very famous Mehran classification for stent ISR. So, these images are showing the same. Type 1 ISR is focal, type 1 is articulation or gap, type 1B is there is margin either proximal or distal, type 1C is focally diffuse, and type 1D is multifocal. Type 2, 3, 4 ISR is diffuse. Diffuse intrastent is type 2. Diffuse proliferative, and uh, type 4 is total. One of the classification based on IVUS, which is given by Kang et al. Focal ISR means defined as lumen area of less than 4 mm square and length less than 10 mm, subcategorized by the location within the stent, focal body type confined to the body of the stent, and focal margin type extending to the margins of the stent. Another type is multifocal ISR, which defined as presence of multiple focal lesions, which subcategories includes multifocal body type confined to the body of the stent and multifocal margin type, which involves margins of the stent. And diffuse is again defined as less than 4 mm square minimal MLA, and length is more than 10 mm, with subcategories into diffuse body type confined to the stent body and diffuse marginal type associated with stent involvement. So it's like same Mehran classification: focal, multifocal and diffuse, which includes a minimum lumen area of less than 4 mm square, and based on length less than 10 is focal, more than 10 is diffuse, and diffuse in that multifocal and marginal. So what is the incidence of restenosis? The incidence of restenosis depends on the actually definition of restenosis, type of stent, and the complexity of the lesion treated. Restenosis rates are considerably higher in more complex lesion subsets such as small vessel, long lesion and bifurcation, which is natural. And clinical restenosis with bare metal stent is relatively early event, most often becoming clinically evident within the first 6 to 12 months after the procedure, and after 1 year recurrent ischemia is more likely to be due to new or progressive disease at the another site rather than restenosis. In bare metal stent, this event is earlier than the drug-eluting stent. So in drug-eluting stents, the rate of intracoronary stent restenosis has been reported between 3 to 20% depending on which DAS is evaluated, and the duration of follow-up and the complexity of the lesion in which stents are placed. For first generation DAS like sirolimus or paclitaxel DAS, the rate of restenosis is between 13 and 16% at 5 years. In pooled analysis of multiple studies comparing everolimus eluting stent with zotarolimus eluting stents, the rates of target vessel revascular at up to 5 years of follow-up were 6.3 and 5% respectively, so least with zotarolimus. Multiple trials have demonstrated that both first generation sirolimus and paclitaxel DAS and second generation everolimus and zotarolimus DAS markedly reduce the incidence of ISR and the rate of TLR by about 75% compared with BMS. So what are the predisposing factors for ISR? It includes anatomical factors, which consist of calcified lesion, bifurcation lesions, ostial lesions, small vessels, long lesions, and repeat PCI of ISR, CT or cephalovenous graft lesions. So these are the anatomical factors which predispose the risk of ISR. More the complex lesion, more there are chances of ISR. Clinical factors includes diabetes, chronic kidney disease, old age, previous history of angioplasty or CABG, female sex, obesity, and taking any anti-proliferative drug resistance. And stent related and procedural factors include use of bare metal stent, stent under expansion, polymer hypersensitivity, stent fracture, geographical lesion miss, stent gap or overlapping stents, smaller post PCI maximum lumen area or minimum lumen area, thicker stent studs, smaller stent diameter and longer stent. So more the long stent, more there are chances of getting ISR, or smaller the stent diameter, there are more chances of getting ISR. So there are three factors: stent related and procedural factors, anatomical factors and patient factors. So, talking about separately, what are the predictors in bare metal stents? In one of the review of 1084 patients who underwent follow-up angiography 6 months after the bare metal stent placement, the incidence of restenosis is related to the number of risk factors present as low as 16% in the absence of any risk factors like diabetes, minimal lumen diameter after stenting less than 3 mm, and as high as 59% when at least 3 factors were present. Okay. So this bar graph is showing incidence of restenosis increases with the number of risk factors, but obvious More the risk factors, more there are chances of getting in-stent restenosis, as we can see in this graph. So, what is the pathogenesis of in-stent restenosis? Pathogenesis include there is a reduction in lumen diameter following stent implantation, which is the result of arterial damage with subsequent neointimal tissue proliferation. So, typically neointimal proliferation is distributed uniformly along the length of the stent, or but may also be relatively focal. So, this neointimal proliferation occurs in association with macrophage accumulation and extensive neovascularization, suggesting a role for organization of mural thrombus. So, basically there is after endothelial damage, macrophage accumulation which leads to extensive neovascularization. So, this chart is showing after PCI stent implantation, there is endothelial and vascular injury which causes inflammation to endothelium, which causes fibroblast proliferation, leads to neointimal hyperplasia. This neointimal hyperplasia continuously ongoing, which causes excessive neointimal hyperplasia, will lead to neoatherosclerosis and ultimately in-stent restenosis. So, this is the mechanism. Basically, endothelial and vascular injury leads to inflammation which causes fibroblast proliferation, macrophage accumulation, neointimal hyperplasia. Ongoing neointimal hyperplasia continuously causes excessive neointimal hyperplasia and ultimately leads to neoatherosclerosis and in-stent restenosis. So, other mechanism of ISR is divided into three parts. Either it is under expansion of the stent, either it is neointimal neoatherosclerosis, or it is stent fracture. So, this image is showing, number 1 is showing neointimal hyperplasia where smooth muscle proliferation is observed, and in type 2 neoatherosclerosis there is newly formed atherosclerotic changes within the neointima, and the third is stent under expansion. So again, this histopathological correlation with OCT cross-sectional views is showing type in A it is showing homogeneous bright uniform layer in the periphery, which is suggestive of neointimal hyperplasia. In type B, there is heterogeneous composition with in-stent necrotic core with thin fibrous cap. Arrow is showing thin fibrous cap, lipid or calcification, and foamy macrophage accumulation. So, heterogeneous is neoatherosclerosis, homogeneous continuously uniformly same distribution, which is neointimal hyperplasia, and the third is stent under expansion where we can see stent struts, stent edges, and the vessel wall. So, stent area is significantly smaller than the vessel area. So, this is again correlating image of IVUS and OCD. Type A image is showing neointimal hyperplasia, C is showing calcified neoatherosclerosis, next is lipidic neoatherosclerosis, and last one is stent under expansion. So, in type A, which is showing characteristic homogeneous and bright appearance, calcified neoatherosclerosis appears bright in IVUS with shadowing beyond the calcium, obscuring visualization of stent struts. Calcified neoatherosclerosis is a heterogeneous appearance where we discussed earlier, and has well-defined borders with stent struts still visible on OCT. And lipidic atherosclerosis appears as high attenuation both on IVUS and on OCT, and that obscures visualization of stent struts with an easily visualized fibrous cap. When asterixis is there, which is showing fibrous cap, and stent, last one is stent under expansion, where blood is present within the OCT catheter. Arrow which is showing. This is again the same, showing neointimal hyperplasia and neoatherosclerosis with calcification. Asterixis in image B is showing calcification. So, now come to the comparison of principal imaging and histological features of restenotic tissue after drug-eluting stents and bare metal stent implantation. So main basic difference is in bare metal stent restenosis, it is more commonly diffuse pattern of restenosis, while in drug-eluting stent often it is focal pattern. In OCT, we can see homogeneous high signal band most commonly, while in drug-eluting stent we can see a layered structure or heterogeneous most commonly. And time course, as we discussed earlier, in bare metal stent, chances of getting restenosis is earlier relatively than the drug-eluting stents because of drug. 6 to 8 months in bare metal stent and ongoing late loss out to 5 years in drug-eluting stent. And what is the difference between histopathological features is in bare metal stent restenosis there is usually a smooth muscle cellularity, while drug-eluting stent is restenosis is hypocellular. The more proteoglycan content in drug-eluting stent restenosis, while peri-strut fibrin and inflammation is frequent in DAS restenosis, and complete endothelulization is seen earlier in bare metal stent restenosis, while late up to 48 months in drug-eluting stent restenosis. Thrombus may be occasionally present in both, and new atherosclerosis relatively frequent in drug-eluting stent restenosis. Now coming to the stent fracture. What is stent fracture? So stent fracture may be identified in association with ISR and is generally defined as complete or incomplete separation of stent strut on angiography and in the absence of stent strut on at least one slice on IVUS. So for ISR lesions secondary to stent fracture, repeat stenting will be required in the majority of cases, although it must be acknowledged that there is an absence of high quality randomized data to support this recommendation. So these are the types of stent fractures. It is divided into 4 types, starting from type 1. Type 1A stent fracture, which is single strut fracture. Type 1B is gap between two struts, which is more than 2 times of 2.5 mm cell. Type 2 stent fracture is incomplete transverse fractures and which is showing like V gap. Type 3 stent fracture is complete transverse with no displacement, and type 4 is complete transverse with displacement. So these are the 4 types of stent fractures. Type 3 and type 4 is complete transverse with no displacement, and type 4 is complete transverse with displacement. So what is the clinical presentation and diagnosis of ISR? For patients with prior placement of intracoronary stent, recurrent symptoms of myocardial ischemia, usually in stable pattern, may be due to restenosis, incomplete revascularization at the time of the initial stent placement, or disease progression elsewhere. So the diagnosis of ISR is confirmed by angio, usually performed as a prelude to repeat the catheter-based therapy in the same sitting. An appreciable proportion of patients with bare metal stent can present with an ACS 3 to 20% number. A similarly high frequency of ACS, mostly unstable angina, has been noted with restenosis in drug-eluting stent. So in 2 small reports of patients with DAS restenosis, 27 and 50% presented with the diagnosis of unstable angina, and 5 and 11% presented with MI. So it can present as more commonly with unstable angina rather than MI. So what should be the management? So the indication of coronary angio and repeat revascularization in patients with prior stenting and stable angina are similar to those for patients without prior intervention, which includes in basis of mechanism, if there is under expansion, or if there is neointimal hyperplasia or neoatherosclerosis or stent fracture. Once it is confirmed that it is stent fracture, then there are 2 options. Either you can restent it if it is feasible, or second option is CABG. If it is neointimal hyperplasia or neoatherosclerosis, then how to approach in stent due to neointima? So if it includes if there is one stent layer, so we can try with drug-eluting stent again, or we can try with drug-coated balloon. But if there is more than 2 stent layers, though first option should be drug-coated balloon, second is brachytherapy, or third is CABG. And what if there is under expansion? Then there are multiple options, starting from high pressure balloon inflation, which should be shorter balloon, 2 smaller balloons together with more than 1 body wire. We can use modified balloon with like angiosculpt or cutting balloon. Third is laser treatment, atherectomy, rotational atherectomy, subintimal lesion crossing, CABG or IVL. So once ISR is identified, we should perform intravascular imaging and to know the mechanical issue on IVS. If it is addressed mechanical issue, satisfactory result, yes, then IVS guided treatment as underlying stent type. Bare metal stent can try with drug coating balloon or drug eluting stent. If stent type is unknown, then again we can try with the both drug eluting stent or drug coated balloon. If it is confirmed that drug eluting stent ISR, then also we can try with drug eluting stent or drug coating balloon. But if no mechanical issues are present, then we can perform routine pre-dilatation of the ISR lesion. So factors favoring the use of drug coated balloon versus drug eluting stent implantation. The factors which favors use of drug coated balloon. One is ISR with less aggressive pattern of ISR like focal with good lumen expansion after balloon dilatation. ISR of bare metal stent, multi-layer ISR, patients at high bleeding risk who cannot tolerate DAPT, and major side branch involved to avoid jailing. So these are the factors which favors drug coated balloon. I am repeating again, ISR with less aggressive pattern of ISR with good lumen expansion after balloon dilatation, ISR of BMS, multi-layer ISR, patients at high bleeding risk who cannot tolerate DAPT, major side branch involved to avoid jailing. And factors which favors repeated DAS is ISR with more aggressive pattern of ISR, example diffuse or occlusive, at higher risk of recurrence, ISR of DAS, single layer ISR, presence of stent related mechanism, example stent fracture or stent gap, and suboptimal lumal expansion after balloon dilatation. So placement of newer generation DAS within the original stent in most cases, PCI using other techniques such as plain old balloon angioplasty placement of a BMS or intracoronary radiation is performed less often, and the use of drug eluting balloon angioplasty rather than placement of a newer generation may be reasonable in those locations where the device is available. And specialized revascular devices such as rota or directional atherectomy or laser angioplasty also can be used to treat ISR. IVS imaging techniques allow for the detection of the under expansion of the original stent. If under expansion is found, high pressure balloon dilatation is performed prior to the placement of a second stent. So choice of device depends on placement of a newer generation DAS, and in particular everolimus eluting stent is the preferred treatment of patients with ISR, irrespective of whether the original stent was bare metal or drug eluting. Everolimus eluting stent is preferred. So despite the apparent superiority of everolimus eluting stents compared with a DAB, it has some role. For example, patients who are not good candidates for long-term dual antiplatelet therapy, those in whom there is concern about having too much metal, like 3 concentric stents in one location, and when compromise of flow in side branch is concerned, may be reasonable candidates for a DAB. Occasionally, cutting balloon is used prior to stenting to increase the likelihood of achieving an optimal final internal luminal diameter. So what are the guidelines? Current European guidelines recommend either DAS or drug-coated balloons with consideration of intracoronary imaging to treat ISR. DCBs, however, are not approved for use in coronary arteries at present in the US. Contemporary US guidelines are from 2011 and recommend that patients who develop clinical restenosis after DAS implantation may be considered for repeat PCI with balloon angioplasty, BMS or DAS containing the same drug or an alternative antiplatelet drug if anatomic factors are appropriate and patient is able to comply with and tolerate antiplatelet therapy. Additionally, the guidelines suggest that IVUS is reasonable to determine the mechanism of stent restenosis. 2014 European Society of Cardiology and European Association for Cardiothoracic Surgery guideline on myocardial revascularization recommends either DAS or drug-coated balloons for the treatment of ISR, whether it is BMS or DAS. So what should be the DAPT duration after ISR PCI? Most important thing to discuss. So in ISR, if we are treating stable coronary artery disease and if we have used DCB or CBA, so more than 3 months of DAPT is recommended. If we have used repeat DAS, then more than 1 year of DAPT is recommended. And in ACS, if we used DCB or CBA cutting balloon angioplasty, more than 6 months of DAPT. In repeat DAS, 1 year of DAPT is recommended. Other clinical considerations should be patients at high bleeding risk should receive minimum mandatory period of DAPT Ticagrelor or prasugrel should be used among patients who present with ACS. An extension of DAPT beyond an initial mandatory period can be considered in patients at high risk of recurrent ischemic events in absence of high bleeding risk features. So to summarize, define the ISR lesion. Do not rely on angiography alone to assess ISR. Do use IVUS imaging to define ISR. Identify contributory factors. Do not stop after identifying one contributory ISR factor. Do assess for multiple contributory ISR factors. Address mechanical issues like do attempt to address all identified mechanical issues and treat as per underlying stent type. Do consider DCB in preference to DAS for BMS ISR and do use DAS or DCB for DAS ISR. Thank you.